What if the greatest weapon in a war wasn't a missile, but a soul they tried to break? What if the one person they threw away was the only one who could save them all? They called her Specialist Sharma. A ghost in the machine, a comms technician whose world was supposed to be wires and frequencies, not blood and steel. Anya Sharma lived in the background, a shadow against the sun-scorched walls of Forward Operating Base Vigilance. Her call sign was Echo Zero, the name given to the forgotten link in the chain. Major Cade Jennings made sure she knew her place. He was a man carved from institutional arrogance, his medals polished brighter than his honor. To him, she wasn't a soldier, she was a liability in a uniform 2 sizes too big. Sharma, he'd bark, his voice a serrated edge, the latrine generator is sputtering again. You're a tech. Go tech it, he saw the phantom in her eyes, the flicker of a past she never spoke of, a family erased by the same conflict she now served in. He mistook her quiet discipline for weakness. One dust-choked afternoon, during a chaotic supply drop, a pallet of ammo crates shifted. Jennings, scrambling for cover from the rotor wash, shoved her hard. Anya tumbled down the steel stairs of the comms tower, her fall broken by a tangle of discarded coaxial cables. He didn't even look back. Watch where you're going, Specialist, he sneered over the whine of the helicopter, leaving her in a heap of bruised limbs and silent fury. That was how they treated her. They tossed her down, again and again, into the grime and the noise, never once looking to see what burned behind her gaze. They never imagined that this quiet girl, this Echo Zero, was a sleeping giant forged in a crucible of loss so profound it had hammered her spirit into something unbreakable. They didn't know that she saw the world not in wires, but in angles, trajectories, and kill zones. They were about to find out. The first siren was a mournful cry, swallowed instantly by the guttural roar of incoming mortars. The sky tore open. FOB Vigilance, a bastion of perceived safety, became a hellscape of fire and shrapnel. The world dissolved into concussive blasts and the high-pitched scream of twisting metal. In the command tent, the lights flickered and died. The screens went black. Panic, cold and sharp, slithered through the veins of command staff. Comms are down. All channels, dead, an officer yelled. Major Jennings, his face pale, barked useless orders, his authority crumbling with the foundations of the base. But in the comms tower, amidst the smoke and the strobing emergency lights, Anya Sharma was calm. The chaos outside was just noise. The real war, the one she understood, was a symphony of patterns. While others saw only destruction, she saw intent. She saw the deliberate bracketing of the mortars, the surgical precision aimed at command and control, the way the initial assault was designed to herd them, to funnel them into a pre-planned kill box. Colonel Marcus Thorne, commander of the entire sector, was trapped in the Tactical Operations Center. His face, a roadmap of old wars and older sorrows, was illuminated by the red glow of the backup power. He watched the feeds from the few remaining perimeter cameras, his knuckles white on the edge of the console. He saw the disarray, the fear. Then he saw her. A lone figure, moving with purpose through the maelstrom. It was Sharma. She wasn't running for cover. She was moving toward it, her eyes scanning the ridgeline beyond the wire. She grabbed a field radio from a dead soldier, her hands working with an impossible speed, stripping wires, bypassing fried circuits. A voice, clear and steady, cut through the static in Thorne's private earpiece. All call signs, this is Echo Zero on emergency tactical. Hostile spotter is on the North Ridge, coordinates 0907 by 345. They're walking mortars onto the TOC. Immediate counterfire required, there was a stunned silence. Who was Echo Zero? Thorne knew. He saw the raw, untamed talent in that single, precise transmission. He watched on his screen as she pointed, directing a dazed machine gunner toward an unseen threat in the shadows. A burst of disciplined fire erupted, and a figure fell from a ruined guard tower. She wasn't just fixing radios. She was conducting a defense. When the dust settled hours later, the base was wounded but standing. Thorn strode through the wreckage, his boots crunching on spent casings. He found Anya by the comms tower, methodically splicing fiber optic cables, her face streaked with soot and sweat. Major Jennings was already there, his voice dripping with condescension. "Good job getting the network back up, specialist. Now, get these repeaters field calibrated." Thorn's voice cut through the air like a razor. "Leave her," Jennings stiffened. "Sir?" "I said, leave her," Thorn repeated, his eyes never leaving Anya. He looked at her hands, not the hands of a technician, but the steady, calloused hands of someone who knew the cold weight of a rifle. "Specialist Sharma. You have a good eye." Anya simply nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I saw the glint, sir." Off his scope, Thorn's expression was unreadable. "Major Jennings, find someone else to calibrate your repeaters. Specialist Sharma is with me." The command tent was a world away from the grease and dust of the comms shack. It smelled of ozone and stale coffee, a place of maps and strategies, not grit and survival. Colonel Thorn unrolled a topographical map of the treacherous valley to the east. "The insurgents who hit us are dug in here," he said, his finger tracing a network of caves. "They think we're deaf and blind. They're getting bold." Major Jennings stood in the corner, arms crossed, his face a mask of resentment. "Sir, with all due respect, sending out a recon team now is suicide. And putting a comms tech on point?" He scoffed. "That's not just suicide, it's malpractice." Thorn ignored him. He looked at Anya, who was studying the map with an intensity that startled him. She wasn't just looking at the terrain, she was reading it. "What do you see, Sharma?" he asked, his voice low. Anya pointed to a subtle depression on the map, a feature almost invisible. "They won't be in the main caves, sir. Too obvious. They'll use the natural funnels in the terrain for ambush points. Here. And here," she indicated two narrow passes. "They'll have overwatch from this position. It offers concealment and a clear field of fire." It was a masterclass in tactical analysis, delivered with the quiet certainty of a seasoned veteran. Thorn felt a grim satisfaction. He had been right. He turned to the grizzled NCO standing beside him, Sergeant Rico Diaz. "Sergeant, Specialist Sharma is joining your recon squad. Give her a rifle." Rico's face, etched with the scars of a dozen deployments, tightened. He glanced at Anya's clean fatigues, her slight frame. "A wire head, sir?" "She'll be a liability, she will be an asset," Thorn countered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "She sees the board." "That's an order, Sergeant," Rico grunted, snatching a rifle from the rack and thrusting it at Anya. The weight of the M4 felt like an old friend in her hands, a comforting, familiar heft she hadn't felt in years. As they geared up, Jennings cornered her near the supply cages. "Don't think this makes you something you're not," he hissed, his proximity an invasion. "You're a glorified mechanic. Thorn's little pet project. Out there, rank and politics don't matter. You'll get good men killed." Anya met his gaze, her own eyes like chips of flint. "I have no intention of getting anyone killed, Major." Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a promise. She was no longer Echo Zero. Out in the field, under the cold, indifferent stars, she was a warrior reborn. The valley was a place of ghosts, where the wind whispered through jagged rocks and every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Sergeant Rico Diaz led the squad with a practiced, weary caution. He kept Anya in the middle of the formation, a place for liabilities, where she could be watched. He still saw the technician, not the soldier. He saw the clean uniform, not the fire in her eyes. The silence of the night was the first warning. No insects, no animals. Just the sound of their own breathing and the crunch of gravel under their boots. Anya felt it first, a subtle shift in the air, a tension in the darkness. "Sergeant," she whispered into her comms, her voice barely audible. Hold. Rico stopped, annoyed. What is it, Sharma? High ground. 2 o'clock, she breathed. I see movement. Rico raised his thermal scope, scanning the ridge she indicated. Nothing. Just rocks, shivering in the cold night air. Negative, specialist. You're seeing ghosts. Let's move. But Anya didn't move. Her instincts, honed by a past she buried deep, were screaming. They're waiting for us to enter the Narrows. It's a classic L-shaped ambush. We're in the kill zone. I'm the team lead here, Sharma, Rico growled, his patience gone. You follow my orders. A green tracer round ripped through the air, striking the rock just inches from Rico's head. The night exploded. Muzzle flashes erupted from the darkness, a storm of lead tearing into their position. The squad scattered, returning fire blindly. Rico, pinned down, cursed his own arrogance. She had been right. Anya didn't panic. The chaos slowed down, becoming a deadly equation she had to solve. She crawled to a better vantage point, her rifle a seamless extension of her will. She saw what the others couldn't, the slight depression in the rocks hiding a machine gun nest, the flicker of a helmet on the ridge. One breath. Squeeze. The machine gun fell silent. Another breath. Squeeze. The spotter on the ridge crumpled. She moved with an eerie economy of motion, her shots precise, devastating. She was a phantom, calling out targets with chilling accuracy. Hostile, East Rock Formation, 60 meters. Sniper, high ground, 2 o'clock. Rico, his face a mixture of shock and awe, relayed her commands. The tide of the firefight began to turn. They were no longer victims, they were hunters. He watched her, this quiet tech, fighting with the ferocity of a wolf, her movements fluid, her aim perfect. This was no wirehead. This was a predator. They fought their way out, bruised and battered but alive, thanks to her. As they regrouped at the extraction point, Rico approached Anya, his helmet in his hands. The skepticism was gone, replaced by a deep, grudging respect. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that, Sharma? Anya looked out at the dark valley, the ghosts of her past swirling in the shadows. I had a good teacher, she said, her voice distant. My father. Rico nodded slowly. He didn't need to know the details. He just needed to know who had his back. And from that moment on, he knew. Anya Sharma was no liability. She was the deadliest weapon they had. Colonel Thorne's belief in Anya solidified into something harder, something more dangerous, a plan. He saw in her not just a soldier, but a key. He pulled her from Rico's squad and gave her command of a 4-person fire team, designated Spectre. Their mission, to hunt the hunters, to dismantle the insurgent network from the inside. The promotion sent a shockwave through the command structure. Major Jennings was incandescent with rage. He saw Anya's rise as a direct assault on his authority, a public humiliation orchestrated by Thorne. He began his campaign of whispers, planting seeds of doubt. She's reckless, he'd tell other officers. Thorne's letting his fascination with this girl cloud his judgment. She's going to make a mistake, a fatal 1-inch. His sabotage was subtle, insidious. For Spectre Team's first mission, a raid on a suspected bomb-making facility, the intelligence packet he provided was incomplete. Key details were omitted, a reinforced secondary entrance, a network of tunnels beneath the target building. He passed it off as a simple intelligence failure, but it was a calculated test designed to make her fail. Spectre Team walked into a meat grinder. The raid went bad from the first breach. They were met with heavier resistance than expected, funneled into a bottleneck, and cut off. A rocket-propelled grenade turned their cover into a cloud of pulverized concrete. 2 of her team were down, and the enemy was closing in. Anya's training, the cold, hard lessons from her father, took over. Rico, suppress the east flank, she commanded, her voice cutting through the roar of battle. Rico, now her second-in-command and fiercest loyalist, laid down a blistering field of fire. Anya dragged her wounded medic to safety, applying a tourniquet with practiced efficiency, her hands steady despite the adrenaline. They were trapped. The intel was fatally flawed. This wasn't just bad luck, it felt deliberate. The ghost of her past trauma rose up, a choking miasma of guilt and failure. She saw her family's faces in the smoke, heard their screams in the gunfire. The feeling of being helpless, of being caught in a trap laid by unseen hands, was terrifyingly familiar. But this time was different. She wasn't a child anymore. She was a leader. They're herding us into the tunnels, she realized, seeing the pattern in the chaos. They want us underground, it was a trap within a trap. She looked at Rico. We don't run. We attack. They won't expect it, they did the last thing the enemy anticipated. Instead of retreating, they pushed forward, a furious, two-person assault that broke through the enemy line with sheer ferocity. They fought their way out, carrying their wounded, leaving a trail of defeated insurgents in their wake. They survived, but the cost was high. The mission was a tactical victory but a strategic failure. Back at the FOB, the weight of the near disaster settled on Anya's shoulders. Jennings was there to meet them, a look of faux concern on his face. A tough break, Sharma. Sometimes the intel is just wrong. Anya looked at him, her eyes burning with a cold fire. She saw the flicker of triumph in his gaze, the satisfaction. She knew. She didn't know how, but she knew he was behind it. She was no longer just fighting an enemy in the mountains. She was fighting an enemy within her own ranks. The taste of betrayal was bitter, far worse than the grit of dust and cordite. It settled in her gut like a cold stone. In the sterile quiet of the medical bay, Anya sat beside the bed of her wounded medic. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was a grim metronome counting her failures. The survivor's guilt she had carried for years felt fresh, raw. She saw the faces of her family, lost in a bombing she alone had survived. Now, she saw the faces of her soldiers, hurt under her command. Was Jennings right? Was she just a liability getting good people killed? Doubt was a poison, and it was spreading fast. She replayed the mission, every second, every decision. The intel flaw was too perfect, too precise in its deception. It wasn't a mistake. It was a signature. She remembered a garbled fragment of a transmission she'd picked up just before the raid, something she'd dismissed as atmospheric interference. A burst of encrypted data on a frequency known to be used by an insurgent commander. It had been transmitted from inside the FOB's perimeter. She took her suspicion to the one person who might listen. Colonel Thorne's office was dark, the only light coming from a single desk lamp illuminating his scarred face. He listened without interruption as she laid out her theory, her voice low and steady. She didn't present accusations, only facts. The flawed intel. The perfectly placed ambush. The anomalous transmission. Major Jennings signed off on the intel packet personally, she finished. He said he vetted it himself. Thorne leaned back, his eyes hard as granite. He had seen men like Jennings before, men whose ambition curdled into something rotten, who would burn down the world to rule over the ashes. He had suspected Jennings' jealousy, but not the depths of his treachery. This is a serious accusation, Sharma, he said, his voice a low rumble. If you're wrong, it's your career. If you're right, he let the sentence hang in the air. He stood up and walked to a locked steel cabinet. He pulled out a sleek, matte black rifle, a customized State Route 25. The insurgent leader, codenamed Al-Masri, is meeting his lieutenants in 3 days. It's a high-value target we've been hunting for months. The official mission is a drone strike. Major Jennings is overseeing the targeting data. He placed the rifle on the desk between them. But drone strikes can be inaccurate. Especially when the targeting data is fed by a traitor. A silent understanding passed between them. This was no longer a standard military operation. It was a reckoning. "Your new mission, Spectre Team," Thorne said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "is to provide overwatch. You will insert covertly, observe the target, and confirm his identity. You will not engage unless the drone strike fails or is deliberately misdirected. Your real mission is to find the proof. Expose the leak. Expose Jennings." Anya looked at the rifle, then at Thorne. The doubt that had plagued her was burned away by the cold fire of purpose. She wasn't a liability. She was the weapon he was aiming at the heart of the rot. "We won't fail, sir." Her alliance with Thorne was now forged in secrets and steel, a silent pact to excise the cancer that threatened to destroy them from within. The mission was a ghost operation. Spectre Team, now just Anya and Rico, were wiped from the official rosters. To Major Jennings and the rest of the FOB, they were on administrative leave. In reality, they were moving through the jagged peaks like shadows, their faces streaked with camouflage paint, their hearts pounding with the gravity of their task. They set up their hide in a rock crevice overlooking the designated target zone, a crumbling, ancient caravanserai. For 2 days, they watched, silent and unmoving, surviving on protein bars and recycled water. They were two wolves waiting for the pack to gather. Anya knew Jennings would have his own trap laid for them. He would anticipate a fail-safe, a backup plan. He would expect Thorne to have eyes on the target. This knowledge was her only advantage. "He knows we're here," she whispered to Rico as they watched the sun set, painting the mountains in hues of blood and gold. "Not where we are, but he knows someone is watching. He'll have a contingency." Rico checked the action on his rifle. "So what's the play?" "We let him spring his trap," Anya said, her eyes scanning the terrain through her scope. "And we use it against him." On the third day, the targets arrived. Al-Masri, a tall, imposing figure, surrounded by his lieutenants. They gathered in the courtyard of the old ruin, confident in their seclusion. Anya's finger rested on the trigger, her breathing slow and controlled. She could end it now, with one clean shot. But her mission was bigger than one man. In her earpiece, she heard the calm, detached voice of the drone operator. "Predator is on station. Target package acquired. Awaiting final authorization for strike." Then, Jennings' voice cut in, crisp and authoritative. "Command authorizes strike. Weapons free." Anya watched through her scope, her blood running cold. The coordinates Jennings had just authorized were 200 meters south of the actual target. The drone strike was a diversion. It was meant to miss, to cause chaos while a second enemy force, a force Jennings had positioned, would move in to eliminate the real threat, Spectre Team. "He's making his move," she breathed. "Rico, get ready." As the Hellfire missile screamed down from the heavens and impacted harmlessly on the empty mountainside, the insurgents in the courtyard looked up in confusion, not fear. And from the rocks below Anya and Rico's position, a second force of fighters emerged, their weapons aimed directly at their hide. Jennings' trap had been sprung. It was a pincer movement, designed to crush them between the fighters below and Al-Masri's men above. But Anya was ready. "They're using our position as a firing line," she said calmly, as bullets began to chip away at the rocks around them. "He fed them our location. But he fed them the location of the hide, not the shooter." She had anticipated this. Hours earlier, she had moved to a secondary sniper's nest, 100 meters away, leaving Rico in the primary hide with a remote-triggered radio to act as a decoy. The enemy was attacking a ghost. From her new position, Anya had a perfect view of the ambush force. They were exposed, confident, firing on an empty nest of rocks. It was a turkey shoot. One by one, she took them down with the cold, methodical precision that was her signature. Rico, providing suppressive fire, drew the attention of Al-Masri's men, pulling them into a crossfire. The hunters had become the hunted. In the chaos, Anya saw her chance. She patched her comms directly into the command channel, a channel she knew Jennings and Thorne were both monitoring. "Colonel Thorne, this is Spectre 1, her voice was clear, ringing with authority. The drone strike was off target. Major Jennings provided false coordinates. I have a second hostile force engaging my position. They were pre-positioned. They knew where we were." A burst of static, then Thorne's voice, like thunder. "Jennings, what is the meaning of this?" Jennings' voice was strained, panicked. "It's a system malfunction, sir. The insurgents must have had a secondary team." "No," Anya's voice cut through his lies, sharp as glass. "It was not a malfunction." She switched her audio feed, patching in a recording she'd been making of a specific frequency. It was Jennings' voice, speaking in coded Pashto, directing the ambush team. The transmission was clear, undeniable. "The American observers are in the rocks above. Eliminate them after the drone strike. Al-Masri is the priority. Keep him alive." The betrayal was laid bare for all to hear. On the command channel, there was a stunned, damning silence. In the valley, Al-Masri, realizing the trap had turned, tried to flee. He never made it. Anya's final shot of the day was perfect. The battle was over, but the war for the soul of FOB vigilance had just been won. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Colonel Thorne's military police descended on the command tent, taking a pale, trembling Major Jennings into custody. The broadcast of his treason had sealed his fate. He was stripped of his rank, his medals, his honor, a hollow man defeated not by an enemy bullet, but by the quiet resilience of the woman he had tried to break. Anya returned to the FOB not as a ghost, but as a legend. The story of Spectre Team, of the wirehead who outsmarted a traitor and dismantled an entire insurgent network, spread like wildfire. The soldiers who had once overlooked her now looked at her with a mixture of awe and reverence. She was no longer Echo Zero. She was Spectre 1. She stood with Thorne on the dusty airstrip, a medevac helicopter waiting to take her to a rear-area hospital for a piece of shrapnel in her shoulder. The wound was a minor price for the victory she had secured. "You did good, Sharma," Thorne said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "More than good. What you did out there, it was legendary." Anya looked at the horizon, at the mountains that had almost claimed her. The ghosts of her past were still there, but they no longer haunted her. They were a part of her, the source of the strength she had found in the fire. "I just did my duty, sir," she replied. Thorne shook his head. "You did more than that. You reminded us what duty and honor really mean." He held out a small, velvet box. Inside was the insignia of his own elite unit, a silver wolf's head. "This isn't a promotion. It's a recognition of what you already are. There's a place for you with us." As a leader, she took the box, her fingers closing around the cool metal. It was a new beginning, a path forged through betrayal and battle. She had faced the enemy without and the enemy within, and she had triumphed. Her journey from the bottom of the stairs to the pinnacle of command was complete. She had not only saved her unit, she had redeemed her own past, turning her deepest wounds into her greatest weapons. So I ask you, when you feel discarded, when they try to tell you your place, what hidden strength lies dormant within you? What legend are you waiting to become? Let us know in the comments what resilience means to you. Like and share this story if you believe in the power of the underdog. And never, ever, underestimate the heart of a warrior.